already loved by others.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hudspeth. Thank you for joining me. I'm continuing my story on my journey to self-awareness. In the last video, I talked about the liberation that I felt from learning to accept myself. And I told you in my next video that I would share some practical ways that I learned to do that. But before I tell you about that, I would like to say here that I think the biggest reason we don't accept ourselves is because somewhere along the way we've believed that we weren't okay the way we were. That somehow we needed to alter who we were, or we blamed certain parts of our personality or temperament because we felt rejected. And again, it goes back to that realization that you have the power to think and to believe what you want to believe. And if you have a negative experience as a child, many times, of course, we equate that and say, well, I must not be okay then if this happened. I could act differently. If I acted differently, maybe mom or dad wouldn't get mad. Or if I acted differently, maybe this friend would want to play with me. Or if I acted differently or was different, maybe this boy would like me. And I think that that's normal. It's common in our culture. But I want to say that it robs you of your power, and it robs you of your ability to love yourself, because you start to believe that you're not okay, that something's wrong with you. And I know I picked up that belief along the way. I think one of the reasons that I modified my behavior when I was with different groups of people was because of that need for acceptance. We all need to feel we're accepted. We all need to feel loved. We all need to feel like we're okay the way we are. That is the greatest sense of empowerment, I think, when you like who you are and you believe that it's good the way that you are. And in that, I want to address that everyone has weaknesses. And our weaknesses usually can't be changed. They maybe can be tempered so that they're not so extreme. But everyone comes onto the planet with, areas that they're really good and strong in and areas that they're not. And so I just want to say to that in learning to love yourself and in learning to accept yourself, you have to accept those weaknesses too. And honestly, as you mature and grow in the love of yourself, you'll actually be grateful for those weaknesses, because those weaknesses lead you to places of empowerment and wholeness. And I'll explain more about that later. But basically, when we don't feel accepted, it's because we have felt rejected somewhere. So as I'm going through this process of learning to love myself, one of the things I did was take myself on dates. Do the things for myself that I wish someone else would do for me. I, in essence, was becoming my own best friend. And it was really awkward and weird at first. I remember one of the first ones is I love water. I love all kinds of water, lakes, rivers, ocean. And there was a lake nearby. And I thought, I'd really like to see the sunset at the lake. So I took a blanket and I took my journal and I took something yummy to drink and found a spot and sat out there to watch the sunset. I started paying attention to what was going on around me. I really focused on the water, and I focused just on breathing and relaxing and trying to be still. But this was so good for me, because in sitting there and waiting for the sun to set, I really relaxed. And inside my head, I would just say to myself, I love you. I really love you, and I'm committed to being healthy mentally and emotionally. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to learn how to do that. And I meant it. And I did see the sunset that day, and it was glorious. And it is my most memorable sunset of my entire life, because it was during that time that I realized I could have peace and I could have joy and I could have happiness all by myself, just sitting there, just being. And it really changed me. I felt a shift. And the next date I took myself on was easier. And the next was easier, and so on. So that was really a powerful, practical way to get to know myself. Another way was mirror work. I've talked about this before in my other videos, but you either get a handheld mirror or you stand in front of your bathroom mirror, but you want to have privacy. Make sure it's a time when you're completely alone, you're not going to be interrupted. And I would ask myself one question, and I would ask myself that same question for a week, and then I would write down whatever I heard inside was the answer. So the very first thing I asked myself is, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? And immediately I began to tear up. And I realized I was afraid of so many things. And I had my journal nearby, and so I just wrote down all the things I was feeling, all the things I was thinking. And I stopped after that, and I did it again the next day, and the next day. And by the end of a week, it was like, okay, I know what I'm afraid of. I know what I need to work through. I know what is reasonable fear, and I know what's unreasonable. I know that now. And I kind of just stopped there, okay? These are the things I'm afraid of. And it was interesting that even in speaking that out loud to myself, I realized how unreasonable some of those fears were. Like the fear of being liked, the fear of being loved, or not loved enough, not liked enough. And I realized that I was loved. I loved me, and I had family and friends who loved me. And so much of the fear that I felt was just internal in here. It was just like a dialogue, a tape, a hamster wheel of thought going on in my head. And so the next week, I asked myself, what do you need? And again, I cried and cried because it was as if my inner self was like, finally, she's asking. And I was like, yes. So I went through a series of questions. I went through, what am I afraid of? I went through, what do I need? I went through, what do I want? I went through, what brings me joy? What brings me sadness? What brings me peace? What brings me fulfillment? And I would say I practiced this, gosh, I don't know, probably 3 months. But it was so insightful because when I got done, I knew so much more about me than I'd ever known before. And it was very healing. And so then I could take that information, the answers to those questions, and I could be proactive, use my personal power, for making myself happy, for making decisions, for making boundaries. I was able to take that information now and be proactive about making some adjustments in my life, either adding or taking away things in my life that would lead to greater happiness and joy and peace. And my life coach called it setting yourself up for success. And that's what you do. Use your personal power to set yourself up for success. But before you can do that, you've got to deal with your pain. You've got to resolve those painful issues that are inside. And then you've got to deal with how you think. Does the way you're thinking benefit you? or does it hinder you? Because the beautiful thing about your thoughts is you get to choose. Now, I don't believe every thought that's in your brain you originate. I think there are thoughts that come from media, come from other people, come from billboards, a song, but you have the choice if you want to keep that thought, if that thought works for you or it doesn't. And most people are not thinking about what they're thinking about. And I'm not talking about becoming an overthinker and overanalyzing. There's a balance in everything. But it does need to be said here that a lot of my getting to know myself was getting to know the inner me, that inner dialogue that just occurred every day without me trying. And that was another area that was really helpful. One of the things that my therapist had me do was called a mind dump. And it was where I set my alarm on my phone, my stopwatch, to 5 minutes. And I had a piece of paper and a pen, and I wrote everything that was in my head for 5 minutes. I didn't worry about punctuation, spelling, if it made sense. No, I just wrote 5 minutes. And then when the 5 minutes was up, I took a breath, got up, changed my state, which means to do something else to alter the emotional state you were in that moment. And then I sat down to read it. And that was very insightful. It was like, wow, I've thought that before. I've thought that a lot. I could see this pattern. And that really helped me gain control of my thought life, gain control of my emotions. Because remember, the thoughts you think that lead to the emotions you feel, that lead to the behaviors or actions that you do. So being able to be aware of what you're thinking about is a very powerful tool in learning to love yourself and in creating a life that you love. Well, I know that's a lot, so I will recap for those of you who want to try it yourself. The first thing for me in getting to know myself was the self-dates, taking myself out, treating myself like I would want someone to take me out and treat me. Took me to a special place, ate a special food, something. And then the second thing was the mirror work. Getting in front of the mirror, asking myself those questions. What am I afraid of? What do I need? What do I want? And doing each question for a whole week until I really had a good view of what motivated me and how I was processing and showing up in life. And then the third thing was the mind dump. Setting the alarm for 5 minutes, writing everything in my brain, getting it all out in there, and then taking a break, changing my state, coming back, looking at it, and realizing, oh, these are some patterns. And to be honest, I still use the mind dump when I have times of stress or when I've had really busy times where I haven't had a lot of alone time. It is very helpful in that area. So that's it for today. I hope if anything in this video has helped you in any way, you will like and subscribe. I appreciate you listening, and I hope I can help you find those rare essential discoveries about you. Till next time. Bye. 'Cause I'm already